In the last episode, we talked about my journey, where I came from, how Grit Performance started, and the vision behind what we've built. But Grit isn't a one-man story. At a certain point, this thing stopped being just a gym and started becoming what you all know today. And that's where Tyson comes in. Before he was coaching at Grit, before the gym, before the brand, Tyson had his own journey, his own background, and his own reason for stepping into this space. So today's about filling in that gap, who Tyson is, where he came from, how our paths crossed, and how Grit really became Grit. Because Grit wouldn't be Grit without Tyson.
Oof.
So welcome.
What an intro.
What an intro. I had to read that one off my phone because I wouldn't have remembered it.
Solid.
So give us a bit of a background on, let's go way back. Let's go back to like high school Tyson, who he was he always a sporty kind of kid, growing up, moving forward, and we'll go back in that timeline.
All right. Let's get to it. There'll probably be a few things that I'll be dropping that people don't give more insight in my personality than people are probably aware of, and the unorthodox skill set that I've obtained over time through various means. But as high school Tyson, very different to what it looks like some of the teens are built like today. Every time I see a teen in CrossFit, they look like these jacked specimen. I was definitely the opposite of that, built much more like a broomstick. And that was what initially encouraged, me to step foot in the gym initially. But I guess prior to that, I was fortunate enough to have a mother that put me into just a large variety of sports, everything from water polo to tennis, played rugby league, played soccer. The thing that I clicked most with was combat sports. Specifically in the early days it was kickboxing and karate, which then that ended up changing into jiu-jitsu over time, but I'll get to that later on. So lots of sports growing up, which was something that I look back on now and appreciate very much. And that was, I guess, sort of what kick-started me to first sort of step foot in the gym. And so it sort of started off as as you do, you're in high school, you and the boys, find a local gym and go down there and just start hitting it of an afternoon.
Yeah. So how old were you when you hit the gym?
I think
what age?
Probably would have been, 15, I think, was when you were first allowed to sort of step into the gym and train, right? So it was 15 and, that was the first, I guess, sort of taste of weight training, realistically, right? Everything prior to that was just very sport orientated. And that was what, sort of kickstarted the quote unquote fitness journey. And I became obsessed very early on with training. I think anyone who sort of knows me now, like any conversation surrounding training, even back then, I was just deep diving into different methodologies and, following different training plans and different structures. And, I'm not the most genetically gifted human. So I'm like, how do I make the most out of every, minute that I spend in this gym? But I just absolutely loved it. And I transitioned from that, sort of just normal gym routine into what, back then was CrossFit. But it was a strength and conditioning gym. It wasn't an affiliate. It was, as many, there is many affiliate type gyms in Australia. Whether you think the affiliateship's worth it or not, it's another conversation. But there's a lot of gyms that are, they follow the sort of methodology and utilize the same training structures. They just don't.
Yeah. And obviously affiliating can be quite expensive. So it is, sometimes it's not worth it just to be able to have the name. But again, that's another conversation. So let's backtrack again, because obviously you had a time in jiu-jitsu. What age did you get into kickboxing and jiu-jitsu? And did you compete in it? How long were you involved in it?
Sure. So I guess the competitive side of sports, growing up, it was, I think the first sort of competitive thing I did was water polo. That was
Is that why you're a good swimmer?
Terrible to still have water polo swimming technique. But it was water polo, and that was more along the lines of, regional, state level stuff. Tennis, I had a similar sort of spin in there. I look back on those two sports now and I'm like, man, I wish I stuck it out with those. I think I've changed things so many times. I've just, I've average at a lot of things and just not that great at any one thing. I look back and I'm like, man, you should have just stuck with one of these things. But
definitely tennis.
And so I look at, so kickboxing was something that I got into pretty young, actually. I was probably 14 and I continued on and off with that over the years. And that was sort of, like I competed a lot growing up in like what was called a Kyokushin, which was like a style of karate. And then I had like a couple of kickboxing fights as well. And traveled around for that. Was fortunate enough to have some like state title fights and win some, titles and stuff like that through that, which was cool. I still keep in contact with my trainer from back then now and again as well. And he follows this journey. So he might even be watching, which would be cool. And that was one of the main reasons that I stepped into gym in the first place, was literally to train for combat sports, right? Was to, I was little and I was like, I need to get stronger. So when I hit people, it hurts more. Jiu-jitsu was something that I got into much later, which I'll probably be able to fill the gaps in as we sort of go along with that. But yeah, so it was sort of going to the gym, training to get better at combat sports, and then being like, all right, I want to sort of ramp up the intensity. And then, as I mentioned, that was sort of when I first stepped into what was that sort of strength and conditioning gym and got a taste of like what CrossFit was. Used to do it, back in the day with friends and what most people's OG CrossFit experience sort of felt like. And this is, OG relevant to my age, realistically, right?
Like OG workouts where it's just like Fran and
up, write like 4 things on the whiteboard and just do it and do it.
You just doing it by like with friends, not in a class setting, just
there was definitely classes and there was definitely like just times you'd go in there on a Saturday and do your own thing. And especially like, at this point we're still in high school. So you have school holidays, right? Where you just turn up and, at this point it was like, not too long and I was actually sort of coaching at the gym. I was actually using the space to PT. Sort of skipped a few steps there, but, obviously studied, to become a personal trainer and studied a couple of different strength and conditioning courses and then, transitioned into coaching, obviously initially just as like a one-on-one personal trainer in this gym. So in the spare time, we'd just be thrown down in like the 3/4 floral shorts and like your Nano 2s. And like we joke about this all the time was like,
the long socks.
The long socks where like, nowadays we've got gymnastics groups that are, save our hands to basically we can be on the rig like every day. Back then it was like you either had no grips to the point where if you've ripped, you're like, fuck, it looks like I'm either just grunting through like the next like 2 workouts, or you'd have these
jaw grips,
which are these basically just like tissue paper on your hands that would soak up the blood.
Yes, that's pretty much all it did.
It just kept the bar like a little bit cleaner. But yeah, that was sort of like my first experience with CrossFit and I loved it. And like, once again, I look back on that and I go, I wish I stuck with it, but I was just one of those people where I loved so many different things. Like I was drawn to combat sports massively. And, I think I sort of took like the path of least resistance sometimes, right? Like my fight gym was a lot closer to home and I'd already, established my relationships there. And
it's the convenience.
And it was something that I was at the time pursuing because I was like, didn't enjoy it more, but, bouncing around. And then eventually it sort of just turned into strength and conditioning training, went in the complete opposite direction because you sort of go through these like sports performance waves where you're like, all right, I'm going to do kickboxing a lot. And then I was, doing a little bit of CrossFit. And then it ended up being the fact that I was probably playing way too many video games.
Yeah, so I was waiting for it. So he's quite the nerd that I've heard, and that all he used to do was sit behind his computer playing games. But he tended to skip that a little bit and just go straight to that. He was quite an active kid and, played a lot lot of sports and combat. I think he needs to fill that gap because at heart, he's a true nerd and he still plays card games.
Definitely still play card games.
As his hobby. Let him have.
Magic the Gathering's a hobby, but it used to be, lots of different games. People, I'm sure there's some guys listening to this are going to be like, hell yeah. But I used to spend insane amounts of time playing World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, Halo. Basically, any game that you could think of that you played growing up was where I spent majority of my time. And like, in hindsight, I look back and I'm like, the reason mum put me in so many sports growing up was so she'd drag me out of the house, basically. Because if she didn't, I would have just sat there and like, continued to game. And it's so funny because like I look back on it now and like it's such a weird thing, but I think the skill set that being around technology so much like younger has helped me so much now. Like I think, so we'll talk about some of the different businesses and stuff, I'm sure. Yeah, it definitely helped me develop these like weird, unique skill sets that I still utilize so much today. But so, after sort of the initial, break into, CrossFit and I sort of, didn't completely, leave combat sports as I was actually sort of transitioned into, once again, coaching more along that line.
So let's go down that route of coaching and how you got into coaching. At what age did you get into coaching? Because I know like a lot of it wasn't really CrossFit coaching that
yeah.
people know you as today. A lot of it was coaching out of a more of a Globo gym, doing more of that strength and conditioning. So yeah, let's go down that route.
So I got into it when I was pretty young. Like I think as most people sort of finish, I was at uni studying food science and human nutrition and was doing my personal training, like Cert 3, 4 in fitness in Australia. I think in America, people refer to it as the NASCAR and the certifications that are there. And I loved coaching. Like I always say now when people sort of get into fitness and they're like, they love fitness, right? And they're like, well, I'll become a coach because they love fitness, right? And then they realize that coaching is so different to just enjoying fitness, right? But back then, like I loved coaching. Like people, like all of my friends, it would be like, if we were training together, like I was running the session because I was like, I'd figured out what we were doing and this is what we're doing. And people, anyone that I trained with used to turn up and just be like, what are we doing? So
you would coach people, even just friends that you're training with during the, like, even though you were training.
Early days, right?
Early
like
days,
this was just people would just put some blind trust in me that I had some idea of what I'm doing. I look back on it now and I'm like, I had no idea what I was doing, but everyone thought, right?
Everyone has to start somewhere, right?
And like, you know, but back then, I just loved it. And that transitioned into me being like, well, you know, I think I can make money from this. And I started out and I was there for a very long time at a gym on the Central Coast, which is where I was from. And you know, I look back on it now and so many of the clients that I worked with, you know, some of which I actually still work with today, but they're completely different people to what they were back then in terms of where they are in life, but learned so many lessons. I met some amazing people because like the amount of conversations that you get to have as a one-on-one PT on the floor, like I was there from 5 a.m. to like 10 or 11 a.m. I'd train in the middle of the day, go home, eat, come back and do the same thing in the afternoon. I'd be coaching classes. So I was doing everything from TRX, if anyone knows what that is, and MetaFit and all the different like strengthening conditioning stuff. You know, I was coaching like boxercise and just all like basically like mainstream fitness stuff, right? And back then it was sort of this mix where it was like, all right, well, what sort of pays the bills in the context of like, I've got to sort of coach classes because that's what the gym obviously runs on, right? Like there's, even if we were to sort of compare mainstream CrossFit gyms, what we consider busy compared to like a large Globo gym, Les Mills, it's like
very
nothing.
different. And the skill level is very different and people's training age is very different.
Very different. So back then I was doing a lot of that, but then in my client base, I was doing, you know, a big mix. Like it started off as once again, just general pop, like fat loss. I want to build more muscle. I want to get fitter. I train soccer on a marathon. And then I slowly started to transition more into working with combat athletes, which was like one of my friends had a combat gym that he opened up and I was coaching out of there, working with like, you know, many of the boys, including himself in that. And that was awesome to, I guess, have more of a direction with like the style of training that I was doing. Cause that, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I did back then, which still has a lot of carryover today, like a lot of the sort of speed, power, plyometric work that we do, you know, which I think is like something super, you know, underrated in CrossFit when you're trying to, you know, make people more powerful, especially power limited women, especially like girls that are, power limited athletes. So, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I learned working with combat athletes that I utilize, you know, today. And I would say, you know, I guess over that course, it was pretty much mainstream gym, one-on-one coach for a long period of time. And then I guess we could go to where it is now, into the store, really.
Yeah. So you obviously spent the time coaching. Yeah. Now, I obviously know, but a lot of our listeners don't, that for some time you owned a supplement store, Pinnacle Performance. So do you want to go into that and see how that tied into your personal training when you started it? And go into it.
So it's pretty early on, and like I'd say a couple of years into me coaching, you know, back then it was like, you know, obsessed with training, obsessed with coaching. It was like obsessed with supplements, and it was one of those things where, you know, maybe this is a video game ideology, but I'm like, there's these pills and potions that you can take that make you better. I was like, I need to learn all this stuff, right? And the same way that I was just obsessed with, you know, training, I was obsessed with supplements. And like, I actually had this conversation with Phil the other day, and, you know, Ethan, one of the boys who like worked in Australia, to him all the time, I'd be like, no one's going to walk into this store and know more than me about something, right? Like I just became obsessed with supplements.
And he's still like that.
And it was one of those things where, you know, the next step forward was, well, why don't I try and open a store? And, you know, like I had friends, or I say friends, like associates at the gyms that had stores that, sort of pointed me in the right direction to sort of be able to do my own thing. And then that sort of became, what is Pinnacle Performance and Nutrition. The PT brand prior to that was just Pinnacle Performance, right?
Yeah.
So, creative marketing genius, just add a nutrition onto the end of it, which ended up being the worst idea because the URL for the website was insanely long. Every time someone asked me for my email, it'd be like Tyson at Pinnacle Performance and Nutrition.com.
Oh my God.
They're like, what? I'm like, I regret this so much.
So it's like, it sounds cool. And then,
you literally.
then you try and do your logo or anything. You're like, it's terrible.
And back then, the logo was rough. So, but so I had the shop. I ran that for, a number of years. It was, I think when we actually sold it, it was probably I renewed the lead twice. So it was like 6 years, 7 years or something like that. Yeah.
Wow. Long time.
So a long period of time, right? And I'd say in the early days, that was like something that was pretty much like all I did was get up, coach in the morning, go to the shop, work at the shop, go home. And the shop was, obviously an in-store supplement store, but the e-commerce side of things was a big part of it. And that was, where the gaming skill set sort of come into play. And not that obviously playing video games and the, e-commerce has anything in common, but I just spent a lot of time on the internet, right? So
just the IT side of things. That's
things.
why you do all the books and the...
Yeah, just like some basic like coding knowledge that I had, and just, I guess, more the concept of like finding information and utilizing information, right? Like we always joke about me being a YouTube graduate.
Yes,
degree graduate.
Definitely for anything.
And, back then it was no different. And that helped me, sort of scale that business and be able to do some cool things online. That was, what helped me survive through COVID.
So was it through COVID that really pushed you into the e-commerce, or were you already into it before that?
I think it was definitely into it before, but the COVID made things explode. So through that period, as everyone did, you thought the world was going to end in the first like couple of weeks of it all happening. And I signed up to a software engineering like online course and did some of that. And, I was doing a lot of like marketing through different like what they call this, like a founders YouTube channel. They had like a couple of different like e-commerce courses and stuff that I did. And I was fortunate enough to get and import a product called Gamer Subs, which is like if you're in the gaming world. Yeah. So
it's actually got to do with gaming.
Yeah. So G Fuel and Gamer Subs, there were these two different like nootropic products that were advertised to gamers, right?
Yeah.
And so I was able to basically in COVID, when everyone was stuck at home, playing video games.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was sort of the evolution of what the Pinnacle YouTube channel was. We were sponsoring Twitch streamers and different like online competitions. And, like it did really well. It was weird though, because went through a period where almost all we sold was that. So it was like super vulnerable because you were like, what the hell is happening? And
really niche down.
Yeah. But it helped the business sort of make it through. Definitely didn't like, what I'd say, like boom, because after sort of a few weeks, once some of the bigger companies realized what was happening, they just imported the same products. And then all of a sudden market share comes down massively. But there was a few weeks there where we did really well, and I built up this like massive like email list that we were able to like retarget. So that really helped us sort of push through there. And it taught me so much about e-commerce and just there's so many things just through COVID that I'm moving forward, like with Grit, hopefully we have some meetings with some manufacturers over the coming weeks to do our own supplement brand. We've got a whole bunch of new products that we've launched and we have, coming soon. So like all of the skill sets that, I developed through there, hopefully be able to sort of, implement with Grit moving forward. Yeah. So through COVID, that sort of kept us going. Then after COVID, I was like, all right, there needs to be some sort of like shift here, to sort of allow the business to keep going. And I think like personality wise, I, made a little bit of a shift too. Like I was super interested in like hospitality and coffee and some stuff like that. And that was one of those things where I was like, look, there's no reason I can't get this zoned correctly and do some sort of 50-50 with the sup store and the cafe. And now it's funny because like, I'm not saying we invented it, but like now you look at Sydney and there's so many places that are like sup store acai bar.
It is
like
actually quite common.
And like we didn't do it the same way that a lot of these places have, where they have just like the soft serve acai. Like I think it was, I guess, a bit of a different sort of format, but it was basically we transitioned into having a quote unquote, like you could call it a cafe, but it wasn't obviously like a full cafe with
like a full sit-in kitchen, but
It was more
Acai
like
bowls.
toasties, acai bowl, smoothies, juices, all that sort of stuff. And that was Ocean Street. And so, you know, I'm sure many people listening this that have saw my name that have probably visited the shop,
Yeah,
right? And
on the Central Coast.
yeah,
Fudgy
Fudgy, and that was so fun. Like I think I look back on that now and like people were like, oh, do you miss it? And like I don't, because I fucking love coaching, but
Yeah.
I look back on it and I go, I definitely miss the conversations that I had on the daily with many of the people that used to come in.
Yeah, well, I guess now, because you're coaching more behind a computer screen and there's less face-to-face, and you do sometimes do face-to-face for sure, but not as much, that you probably do miss that human interaction.
Yeah, it's different. Like being strapped behind a coffee machine for however long, or just in a shop and having those longer interactions is a different feeling. Don't get me wrong, I definitely feel like I'm serving my purpose and like my, you know, filling my cup a lot more with the process and I guess the quote unquote job that I have today, right? Like this is the direction, like, you know, this is sort of off topic a little bit, but, you know, I remember having conversation with like best friends of mine, like even when I had Ocean Street and Pinnacle and it was doing well. Yeah. And it was doing really well. And they were like, what's next? You know, what do you want to do next? Where are you, you know, what's the trajectory of the business? And I would just say that I don't know why, but I know that this isn't it. Like, I know that this isn't the thing that I will be doing in 5 years from now. Like, I definitely feel like there's not a higher calling, but just something else that I feel like is the sort of end goal, right? And I felt that for a long time towards the end. And I think that's what sort of, you know, when we get to it, is what made the transition so easy to sort of sell and move on, because I was already 1 foot in, 1 foot out, I think at that time. Yeah, right? Like,
even like, you know, having two things going at the same time, did you find that you struggled to push the supplements when you're so focused on the cafe, or did you find that you struggled to be all in on both because you had two things going? Like what sort of...
I think like towards the back end of it, my personality, I guess like my identity changed a bit, where I was like, I didn't want to just be like the sup store guy, because like I think a lot of people in the industry just give me the ick that had the sups, you know, and like I just didn't want to be seen as that guy. And also I think the more educated, and it's not saying they're not educated, they're obviously like very good at what they do, but like the more educated you become, the more you realize that there's like massive parts of the supplement industry that like you just maybe like you don't align with, you know, and like that's obviously something that we've taken into the products that we are going to sell. It's not selling everything, it's selling like very specific products that I wish it existed back then. But yeah, there's a lot of products that exist, a lot of bullshit that exists in the industry.
At the end of the day, you're just trying to get people to buy a stack for fat loss, and usually it's not the thing that's going to help them.
100%. It's like they'd come in and like it was hard, because it was like, you know, for the business to survive, what actually had to be done. And it had to be done the way that the franchise do it, where they come in and it's like, no matter what, you have like these minimum targets that they need to hit. But like my conscience could never allow that to happen. If the person come in and they're like, oh, I just, you know, this is my goal. I'm like, honestly, you probably just need this. And it would be like a $30 sale versus like, you know, and so over time, I'm like, your conscience isn't going to allow you to actually drive a sustainable business. And that was probably one of the reasons why the cafe become so much more appealing and more of a focus. And then that's what made coaching become, once again, even more of a focus. Because I sort of went through waves, right? Like you go, when I was coaching a lot, I think I sort of burnt myself out a little bit. And that's what made me want to like transition into, focusing more on the cafe and the shop. And then it was only like, once again, just having that breakaway. And then, you know, once we sort of met and
yeah, well, that's another story. Hey, so you obviously owned the cafe and still had the sup store, and what I believe you were asked to coach at a friend's gym, maybe, or like a CrossFit gym, afternoon or something, maybe once or twice a week. So go through that of how, I guess, we met, how you sort of become into Grit, and how we got to selling the cafe and the sup store, because it's a public holiday here today, and usually we spend every public holiday at the shop, which we haven't done for a couple of years.
So, well, I mean, the first time we ever met was actually a long time ago. That was when Pinnacle. That was like first or second year of Pinnacle.
You were that sub guy.
That was that sub guy, and that was at BTS. What used to be. I mean, still a good comp, but like back then, that was
the comp.
That was the comp, right?
Yeah.
And we had a stall set up there. It was actually me and Jake. Still, Jake was there.
There you go.
he come and hung out with me. And you were doing it with one of your friends from back then. And even back then I was like, damn, who that?
I was really shredded back then. I was very small.
Yeah, you were very
and
small
very
back
lean.
But yeah, so that was actually the first time we met. But I guess regards to the sort of reintegration back into CrossFit was, at this point I was obviously still coaching like strength and conditioning. It was more combat focused, but I was just doing it with like a select few people and just like online programming and stuff primarily. And one of my friends, he bought a gym, a much bigger gym than what he had, and he had the combat sports gym, and it was a CrossFit gym. So he took over this gym and was like, well, would you be able to coach the classes? And so I was like, yeah, 100%. So that was sort of what kickstarted me getting back into, I guess, like in-person coaching. And like, it's funny because it was
back into CrossFit.
CrossFit, yeah. And that was actually a gym that I trained at a long time ago as well, with Zeke, who's like, a good friend of mine like, to this day. So he trained there for a long time. I trained there for a long time. And so one of my other friends bought it, took it over, and yeah, he ran that. So I was coaching there. That sort of, reignited the passion to get back into it for a little bit. Things sort of got a little bit hectic with the cafe in terms of just like things were just getting a bit busier, and I did realize I was spreading myself a bit thin. And it was fortunate that his partner is also a coach. Like he met someone throughout this process, and she was able to take like a big chunk of that. And they've still got this gym today, just in a new spot. So, but yeah, so that's sort of like I guess.
So you end up stopping the coaching, and during that time, just because
I dialed it back. Yeah,
busy.
it wasn't like I stopped completely. I was just doing like more sporadic things, because it went from doing like a lot to then being like, probably not
too
going to be able
much
to sustain this. Yeah, between Pinnacle, the cafe, and then coaching, I was like,
it's definitely spreading yourself.
Yeah, I'll be cool.
Very, very thinly. So, but you're still training there and still doing CrossFit.
Doing CrossFit, yeah.
And at the time, were you had sights of getting back into coaching, or you were sort of like thinking that this was sort of where your future was going to go?
It was, interesting. I think at that time I was definitely like, I love this, and like I want to find a way to sort of reintegrate it. Didn't have full sight, like, potentially it was at that point in time, it was like, maybe I'll figure out what I can do to just maybe take a few steps back. I think sometimes people always just think about stepping forward, whereas for me, I was like, hey, maybe I sell the shop and just like step back into coaching, and that would have.
So you had those thoughts even before we met?
Yeah. So I think that was one of those things where I was like, I'm enjoying this, and I want to, see what I can do with it.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah. And then I guess, through the process of coaching and whatnot, or training, I can't even remember how it started, whether I replied to your
You replied to
first.
The story of Willow. So I just opened the gym pretty much, and I would post a story of Willow at 4:30 in the morning when I was going to open up the gym, and you replied something and being like, I'm living for these stories or something.
This was when Willow would just be like sitting at the door waiting for people.
Yes, waiting for people to come in, or waiting for the ball, or or anything like that. Yeah. And you were obviously at the gym training at that time.
At that time, because obviously if you have a cafe, you wake up early. So I was training real early.
Yeah.
Sometimes I remember there was a period there where me and Zeke were training together, and it was like 3:30, 4 o'clock. And my knees, the cartilage in them, it's not in a good spot. So when it's winter and it's cold and you try to squat,
it's not great.
A thoroughly unenjoyable experience. But that was still fun, still enjoyable. But I was training early, hit that, slid into the DMs.
The classic slid into the DMs. And then I think from then on, it was kind of, you would put up a story of you doing a bit of CrossFit, and I would kind of reply and be like, you should, next time you're in Newcastle, like pop in, welcome to train anytime. And you kind of just jumped on that offer.
Yeah.
Drove up in the Black Stallion today. Which I wasn't so sure about this guy.
That's how I knew that she wasn't superficial. I was like, if I could turn up, like, I used to have a nice car, but I sold it, and like, I, don't really plan on having anything except that. I'd drive a moped. I wouldn't even own a car if I didn't have to be honest.
You don't drive anyway. I always drive.
Yeah. So rocked up in the Black Stallion, the little black I-30,
to come get his ass whooped.
Get my ass whooped in a workout. I did that for a few weeks in a row, I think.
Yeah, you did.
It was like every day that I had like two of the other crew in, that I would drive up on like a Wednesday or a Thursday
usually
or something
Wednesday.
like that. Yeah. And that being said, and she obviously fell immediately in love with me.
Listen to it.
and saw me just like miss re-racking a jerk, saw me just get absolutely annihilated in every workout, and was
No,
like,
you also
this will keep my ego high. I'm just going to clean this guy up for the end of the night.
You also unracked the barbell and you took too much of the weights off that it just flipped completely up.
And
then you didn't have clips on. And it fully flipped up and nearly knocked yourself out. And I think that was like day
man.
2. You were really nervous.
Especially.
And he still can't count reps. He's a shocker for miscounting reps. So he started to get a bit close to me and I was like, I don't think he did the reps. And luckily I had it on video.
I was like, my VO2 max just jumped by 30% in 7 days. I come back nearly quarter in a workout. And she's like, how many reps? I'm like, I reckon I did them all. But when you're in zone 5, I'm trying to hunt down someone who's levels fitter than you. Your counting sort of just goes out the window. But yeah, so that was that.
So pretty much we obviously met, and then let's talk about the story of how you come to, selling the cafe and that decision of selling the cafe. Did it come easy? Was it something that was quite a challenging and scary thought? And that was only probably been in like 12 months into the relationship. Like, was it something that you felt hesitant to do, knowing that, you're going all in on something?
Yeah. I think like, I'd say no, just based on it's such a disgusting thing to say on a podcast.
Don't say
it's
it.
just like, when you know type thing, right?
Oh, God.
Early in that process, and keep in mind too, like we'd been like at that point, like you'd have already been working in the cafe a bunch. Like I've obviously like helped out with different stuff around the gym. Like we'd been in and out of like each other's quote unquote businesses like multiple times leading into that. We had insight into the path that both of us wanted to take. At that point I was like driving to the coast and up here, like sort of,
quite a lot
on the daily basically, right? Which was, adding up fast. So like there was, lots of travel involved. And like it was one of those things where once again, I still do it, but like I think we sort of come to, we're in Grit 1.0 for a while. And honestly, it's just so funny. Like you look at it because it all happened because of the opportunity of this gym.
Yeah,
coming
it did.
up for sale, right? Like that was the catalyst.
Yeah.
And it was realistically like, there's an opportunity here to take like a big step in this direction, but it was something that we were like, we'll probably have to do it together.
Yeah, it was like a scary thing that I came to you and been like, look, this is I heard that this gym was going down. The space was perfect. We know that it's got so much potential. It's great for our fitness comps and everything. The rent was cheaper than where I currently was and the space was bigger. So it was kind of like a no-brainer to go into it, but we needed the money to be able to do it. And I was, it's obviously a scary jump to be able to do that and be able to get out of a lease. Like I think I had a 3-year lease and it was only 1 year into lease. So I needed to break the lease. And when I came to you about it, then that kind of sparked your decision of like, we probably need to do this together and like maybe I sell the cafe. But it didn't happen at the start.
No, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen for 10 months or so after. So run through that process of like once you decided to sell and when you decided how long it took.
So I guess like we decided it would happen. And so like obviously we decided that, all right, well, this is a venture that we'll go in together on like financially and I'll keep the cafe and the shop. So we basically were able to know that there was, I guess, dual income streams essentially, right? Like without getting into like the nitty gritty, to know that like, all right, I've still got a business and like, at that point there was obviously some debt that was created. So it would just help sort of recoup that a little bit quicker. And that was sort of just because we were like, at that point, the time dispersion between the two still sort of made sense, right? Like I was able to fortunately have staff at the cafe, right? Which is what made it so that I didn't have to be there 24/7. That's probably one thing that I've left out. I had people that obviously work there too, right? So, I was able to be a little bit more flexible with things. And so, driving up, painting the gym and doing lots of stuff like with the gym and whatnot. And then it was able to still sort of, run my shop. And it was probably, I don't know, a year and a half or so.
I think it was 10 months because you sold it in October, didn't you?
Yeah.
The year after. So, and we got it in November. Yeah, almost a year, like 11 months.
So 11 months in, it was one of those things, and all the members would probably know because all the discussion was going down about like the sale. You know, that went back and forth with, a couple of different people until we found someone that was happy to take it over. Fortunately, it's still operating today, with the new owner. And that was something that, sort of helped catapult us to where we are now, was not just obviously from having like the additional income, but just time. Like we were both no longer, like I was no longer sort of spread so thin, and it was more like we're both in this together and we're both fully focused on, I guess, the plan that we have with Grit. And I think even at that point in time, we sort of knew the direction that we wanted to go into Grit, and we're like, all right, this isn't just a gym that we're running and like I'll just coach there. It was like, no, there's a lot we want to do with coaching, with the brand, and
with the fitness comps. Because we ran the first Stampede before you had sold. Because remember, we had the Ocean Bowls there.
We had Ocean Street.
With Mum and Burns on the front desk. Yeah. Run through that process of like sort of toes in both, where you're like working at the cafe, but you're also like working, because you did a lot behind the scenes of, the first Stampede, which back then was called Grit on the Green. So run through that little.
Well, I guess like back then, the role that I played in a lot of it was, once again, it's just man behind the mirror type thing. Yeah. Like it was, people would see me at the gym. I'd just be doing a lot of stuff that was like just more stuff.
Yeah, painting on the tools.
On the tools, and, which is a scary thought for any
of my
mates.
It is so scary. Any chippy would be mortified to see what Tyson does. I get scared.
But yeah, and then obviously just like some of the behind the scenes stuff with just like programming and stuff like that at that point. And then I was just still running the cafe, running the sup store, driving down, driving back. So it was a lot. And I think that was one of the reasons that made the sale so easy. It was because it sort of got to the end where I was like, all right, I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Yeah.
So ready for this to be done. I didn't like, I wasn't like hating it, but I just knew what we had here, and that chapter of my life was coming to an end. And I think that's what made it so like burning the candle at every single end, was just because it's like there was so much happening, but it just felt like, I'm just waiting for that.
But your focus shift, you started to enjoy more the programming side of things, because you're programming for Grit again. So we'll back programming, doing the build, doing the perform program. And I think at that time you're programming for me as well, because that was after my surgery. So you would have been programming for me as well.
Yeah.
So that's kind
of just some of the old crew that I was like, I still working with, but like some of the people
that you were. So let's go into that, where like how you got into the one-on-one coaching, because when you sold the cafe, you kind of just stepped straight into it. You weren't really doing any face-to-face coaching at the gym. You were just more doing the programming.
Yeah. So I guess like I've done long periods of like in-person coaching.
Yeah.
I think just like personality wise, I'm definitely more of a like enjoy the architecture of programming and building relationship. It doesn't have to be a remote. It can be in person. Obviously, anyone that's fortunate enough to train at Grit, I get to do that. I just don't do it a lot with the classes. I do it a lot more with people one-on-ones. It was at that point where I was like, I really want to get back into coaching, and that sort of kickstarted me to go back through. I actually did I think towards the end of the cafe, I did the TTT, the conditioning course,
you did.
And then the strength course and the movement course they had. Prior to that, I'd done a lot of like the OPEC stuff and just the general like strength conditioning courses that are offered around Australia, and a couple of different like conjugate systems and just individual different like I guess like fitness people's courses, right? Like they all write and sell courses, write and sell books, right? So I've done a lot of that. But after doing the TTT one, I was like, no, I really want to get back into this. And I think initially it was funny. I mean, I still feel like I've got imposter syndrome now, because I'm arguably not that, like I look at it.
He even got a shout out from one of his idols, and he still doesn't believe in himself.
I think in the early days, it was definitely one of those things where I was like, I feel like I understand physiology, I understand programming, I understand people to an extent, but I'm like, I'm not a great CrossFitter. So it's like selling that was hard,
but as we know, some of the best coaches are the terrible athletes. The best athletes are terrible coaches. So you don't always.
It's definitely a different personality type, like as in to be, and I love competing, right? But I think more than I love competing, I love watching other people compete. And it's one of those things where it's like, I still have my own goals and all these things that I want to achieve, but it's like, it's weird. I say it's selfish sometimes. It's like the way my brain works, fortunate enough to almost get the same dopamine drive from watching someone else achieve a goal as I do me. And it's like, maybe that's this like gene that coaches have where they selfishly get the same feeling that the athlete gets, right? I'm like, I don't know what it is, but I just very much enjoy the process. So yeah, obviously sold the cafe, we're all in on Grit. And then that was the kickstart of me, starting the one-on-one stuff. And obviously, having you support me and I guess, push aside, I guess, some of the imposter syndrome in the early stages definitely helped get the ball rolling. And, even more so now that we've been able to build such a fantastic team of people who have gone from scale to intermediate to RX, people who have even gone from arguably what will be RX to elite. And just people who have all had these different journeys that we've been able to, help them progress on, I think slowly starts to remove some of the imposter syndrome and helps you buy into the fact that like, hey, the systems or the processes, the things that you're, applying to these people is actually helping them. But yeah, I mean, you still battle with that daily. I think it's just one of those things where it's like the Dunning-Kruger effect where like the more you know, the more you realize you don't know shit.
Yes. And I think for you, you're someone that constantly is learning. Like I always get home from coaching and you've got some podcasts or some study up, like you're always learning, you're always open to different methods. You're not just, tunnel vision of this is how I do things and I'm only doing this. So this way you learn different things and you introduce different styles. Like I do all kinds of things in my training, some things I've never seen before, but you always have an explanation of why we're doing it.
And I think, I don't actually think I've said this before, but it's funny now that you say that. And I like, at the start of the podcast talking about bouncing around to like different sports and stuff. I think one of the things that makes me love coaching CrossFit so much more than maybe any other sport is the fact that there's so much like trailblazing to it.
Yeah.
It's not like swimming or running where it's like we have centuries worth of data on these are like the training methods to implement, right?
Yeah.
And like this is the body type and this is the system that you follow. CrossFit's like, it's not that at all. And it's like it's evolved so much over the years. And the coaches that do the best are almost these like coaches that are so moldable and so open to different systems and implementing different things. And they're so
but CrossFit is experimental because they constantly change movements, they add new movements, and you have to be good at everything. So you need a training plan.
For sure. And like
that gives that.
It does, yeah. And that's probably one of the things that just makes me love it so much and like be fortunate enough to connect with, some of the mentors that I have and, and then build off those relationships. And like the characteristics that I see in these like high level coaches are that they're those people who are like constantly learning, constantly seeking out information from realms that seem a little bit unorthodox or different, applying methods that aren't just like written and watching and seeing how they work. Like sometimes once again that almost like doubles down on the imposter syndrome because you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, but like at the same time it's like those traits I think are the things that have made some of the best athletes or the best coaches.
And the coaches.
Yeah. But yeah, so that was interesting to sort of think that maybe that's one of the reasons why I love this so much now in comparison to, maybe some sort of like monostructural type sport. Everything's sort of solved and you're almost just like checking boxes. And
so do you still coach people in combat sports or in just strength and conditioning?
So over time, I've sort of really just focused on CrossFit. And the reason for that is, I mean, just a couple of reasons. One, there's the business reason where I think that if your avatar is a specific type of person, it allows you to, serve that population of people the best. And it's not like, all of the business gurus that are like, you got to be niche and you got to do this. And I only work with males that are 35 to 40 that drive Hyundai i30s and you know what I mean? Like, but I do believe that it allows you to sort of fixate on a certain avatar and like help that person a lot more. I love combat sports. Like, that I'm watching UFC every weekend against your will sometimes. So, and it'll always be a part of my life. And like, I'll definitely go in and out of jiu-jitsu forever for the rest of my life.
You saw every time you go.
And the only reason I arguably still don't do it all the time now is just that training so late, I just come home so wired and I get up early. So it's like, if it worked out that there was a path of least resistance to allow that to happen, it would still be a thing. But I also do still feel, I guess, obligated to uphold many of the things that I'm coaching as well. So that's fine.
And I know for me as a coach, I find a lot easier to be able to coach people when you've done it yourself.
Yes,
So, like, me teaching someone gymnastics or things that I've struggled with, I've become a better coach, and I can coach that thing so much better because I know the struggles, and I've been through the struggles. I know what works. So things like ring muscle ups and chest to bars and bar
mm,
muscle ups, that didn't come easy. They come so late for me. I find that I'm so good at coaching that just based on my own personal experience of the struggles I went through and everything I did to get there, that I can kind of be able to coach it. So it is good. I guess you still have to be in the sport
for
and
sure.
know what it's like and know what the movement feels like.
Yeah, you don't want to lose touch with it, right? And especially because things evolve so fast in this sport too, like we mentioned. Yeah, you've got to always have a finger on the pulse, essentially. And I definitely do feel obligated for that. And just because we have so many of the crew that are at the gym, I feel a sense of responsibility to be around those people and you and stuff like that. And that's not like I'm not saying this like I'm making it as a sacrifice. Like I just love this. Is just the era, the season that I'm in. Who knows what
Yeah.
10 years from now it looks like.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's sort of, I guess, what kickstarted for me to go all in. And now I spend majority of my day programming and talking to the awesome team that we've got that will hopefully continue to grow. We're so fortunate to have, I guess, such a solid group of people, not just with the gym, but my one-on-one clients that trust me with their goals. That's something that I say to them all the time. Like I don't take it for granted because I know what it's like to have goals and then to trust someone else with that process is a massive thing, right? And that was something that I think we sort of spoke about why I was so hesitant and scared, because when I first started coaching you, obviously, like, caring and like almost being as invested in the process of you, there's almost like a sense of fear in that.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like that, I think that motivated me so much to be like, nah, like I'm going to be a reason that you're able to succeed. And I feel that exact same way about all the people that I work with now, that like if someone comes to work with me, that it's like I want them to know that I'm doing everything I can to give them the best service, in terms of like I'm constantly seeking new knowledge. Something that we've said before about coaches is people that go, oh well,
I know
I've
it
done
all.
my level 1, and now people turn up and I just run through like the
Yep.
same sort of pattern every day, and they just switch off, and it's almost like just this clockwork shift work, right? Where for me, I want to try and constantly be at the forefront of like whatever's happening.
Yep.
And I feel like that's not even just me. I feel like anyone who wants to be the best at what it is they do,
Sure.
right?
It's like anything in life. If you want to be good at it, you need to keep upskilling and never think you know it all, because there's always something that you
Yeah.
can learn.
Always something you can learn. Like once again, that's that Dunning-Kruger. It's like the more that I get access to these minds with people, even just like, other athletes you associate with at competitions, and I get to sort of talk to their coaches and stuff like that. And I just realize, I'm like, man, there is just some people who love this shit too. Like, and like knowing that
It's
they're
the
out
echo
there.
chamber.
Yeah. And I could just get to hang out with them, and that doubles down, I guess the love for the process and the game. And, think moving forward, building upon those relationships will just help me continue to love it even more.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
going to go into my next question of where do you see this going? Where do you see the online one-to-one? Where do you see yourself? Like, obviously at the moment you've got how many clients? Like
Yeah. A
over
few.
a lot of clients. So where do you see that going? How do you want to continue to improve on that and keep providing a good service?
Yeah, for sure. So I think I actually heard like another coach the other day say how he's like, like in different mentorships that I've done, I think people sort of put caps on numbers because you realize obviously the time that's required from you for these individuals. And so, there is obviously a ceiling to it. Like we don't just have infinite time, unfortunately. So I think there will be a level that I'll get to where I'm like, all right, this is probably my capacity or where it's at in terms of just sheer numbers. Goal is for us to have both a space locally, so like let's just say Newcastle or like the region that we have, and have that space be something that if someone says, I want to do CrossFit, or even more so, I want to do CrossFit competitively, that we are in the conversation 100% of the time. But like logistically, maybe they don't make that decision because it just works out that there's other gyms or spaces that are better, but like we are in that conversation 100% of the time. That is a goal. Because I really truly believe that we offer an amazing service. We have like great coaches, and we all just like, I say it all the time. It's like, I may not be like the smartest or the best, but like effort wise, like
Yeah.
I just try.
passion
yeah,
and your effort is
yeah.
incredible.
I use that as well
You
with
need a bit
cooking.
more boundaries,
Yeah.
but your passion and effort is incredible.
But like, yeah, I was going to apply that to cooking where I'm like, I'll make something. I'm like, I tried hard, right? I don't know how good it is, but
Yeah, he's become the
effort,
cook of the house,
effort.
and I'm not mad about it.
The Deadpool maximum effort and everything, right? But yeah, so that's for the space. As for a coach, I definitely want to be one of those coaches, I would say, in the Australian space. And this is a journey, right? Like I'm well aware what the coaches that I look up to have been doing this stuff for very long periods of time. And the sport has changed massively, not just in like the past 5 years, last 2 years,
Yeah.
right? Like it's evolving so much. And so the type of coach that I am now is going to be massively different as the sport continues to evolve, as the season changes, the system changes. There's just the sport of fitness, right? Like we can say CrossFit, but we know now that there's multiple different events that use, the
Yeah.
sport of fitness. So who knows what it looks like in a number of years. But I know that when it comes to making people the best possible version of themselves associated with utilizing CrossFit or just strength conditioning principles, like I want to be one of those people in Australia that once again is in the conversation. Like I hate to say like, I want to be the best coach ever. Cause
Yeah.
like realistically anyone who like, I don't know, it's like saying I'm the MVP type thing. It's like the people who say that generally aren't.
Yeah, usually.
And so like, I don't want to say that, yeah, I want to be the best of this. I just want to be one of those coaches, I guess, who's respected by their peers, who is able to provide a service that consistently, whoever works with me, moves in a trajectory towards their goal, to achieve their goals, right? Like I think I said to you the other day that I can't help everyone achieve absolute goals, right? But I can help everyone achieve relative goals.
Yeah,
so if
sure.
people say, I want to go to the CrossFit Games, it's like, the chance of me making
1% of people.
yeah, it's like, it's so slim, but like I want to be someone who can relatively increase someone's fitness, skill, movement, reduce their pain, allow them to build a better relationship with fitness, nutrition as a whole, and do that at scale, really. One-on-one.
Speaking of nutrition, is that something that you still do? Do you still do nutrition with clients?
Yeah. So we still offer a nutrition service that I do, but we're actually fortunate enough to work alongside Phil, who you also would have heard on the podcast, is actually a mentor of mine from a nutrition perspective. And he's someone that we've taken on to be able to like work alongside and like contract with for people who, want to work with Grit, because one, he's been obviously a huge mentor to me. So I have insight into the knowledge that he has.
Yeah, so knowledgeable.
So knowledgeable. And two, he is, obsessed with it like me. He is obsessed.
They're both the same person.
And like
Shay and I are always like, I don't know if we're ever going to get our boys back. They're just going to be stuck talking.
Yeah. And so like, hopefully we can share some insight into that on the podcast, if we can sort of keep ourselves on the rails a little bit, which, is the goal. But yeah, so we have him to work alongside to do the nutrition with. And that's something we'll talk about coming up, because we're definitely going to have, I guess, more service for people who want to do nutrition, especially leading into competitions and want sort of insight into improving their nutrition. So hopefully we can just give away a bunch of free value on the podcast.
Yeah.
But if people are looking for more detailed nutrition coaching, that's something that we offer too.
Cool. Exciting. All right. To wrap it up, just a quick question for someone who might be new to coaching or getting into coaching and might have the nerves of where to start. Where do you think's best for them to start? Like whether it's some kind of study or mentorship or course to do, like what would you recommend for them to do?
For sure. I mean, I guess it depends what route of coaching you want to go down. Let's just use CrossFit, because obviously it's like specific, right? I think there's a few great like education systems out there. OPEX is phenomenal.
Great.
They're phenomenal. And just the resources that they have too, like not just the course, but they have like a number of different like resource libraries. I think there's a lot of, valuable books out there like that you'll be able to, if I had to sit here and list off a few, The Art of a Supple Leopard, Periodization by Bomba would be The Conjugate Method. They'd probably be three like pretty like influential ones. I would then say TTT's Movement and strength course and just those guys in general. But there's so much free information out there on YouTube. Like, honestly, if you have problems and you just search them and study them as you go along, one, it becomes information that's like immediately relevant rather than you trying to like source information and just consume it. Because I think
And
sometimes you just lose it. Like if you're just consuming information for
yeah,
the sake of it, whereas if you're like
looking for something.
looking for something, right? Like say, for example, with just even like your shoulder, and you know, the furthest thing from a physio or a chiro or anything like that, but like being able to just research different components of that and then apply things immediately has given me information that then I'm applying now with another client who's going through similar
Yeah.
things with their shoulder, right? So I think if you're a coach and you're in the space, like getting into it and you're sort of like, how do I further it? Those systems, those books, but then also, you know, access the free information that's out there to solve immediate problems. Don't look for just information for the sake of it. Be specific. Look at one of your clients, look at one of your avatars, and like, you know, be very specific with the problem that you're trying to solve. Find information and apply it and like systemize it, right? Like
Yep.
build systems, write down things that you do and keep them in spreadsheets because
You'll later use them.
you'll later use them
You don't want to lose
with
it.
other avatars, right?
Yeah.
That was one thing that one of my mentors taught me massively, was like, which I wish I had done, you know, a long time ago, but when you're, you know, developing certain systems of training is to, you know, leave them in spreadsheets and you'll be able to back reference them. You'll be able to utilize them with other people, right? And that's sort of what one-on-one, you know, coaching at its core is building efficient systems that work. There's people
Yep.
that have similar problems to overcome, right? Like, yes, one-on-one coaching is individualized, but we're not all these like, you know, perfectly unique, beautiful butterflies. We do have
Yes.
similar issues to overcome. So like, yeah.
And principles work.
Principles work.
Yeah. Cool. All
Okay.
right. Well, that wraps it up. Thanks, guys.
See you on the next one.